already the common ancestors of Neanderthals and modern humans probably had a brain as large as ours. And it's almost certainly the case that Neanderthals were communicating in ways that are probably pretty complicated, complex, and amount to some kind of language. But some people think that language in its modern form is not that old and might coincide with the later Stone Age, Upper Paleolithic revolution 50 to 100,000 years ago and might be specific to our lineage, and that there might be a qualitative shift in the type of language that's being used. There's been one incredibly interesting and weird line of genetic evidence that was so weird that a lot of people I know dropped off the paper. They just didn't want to be associated with it because it was so weird, and they just thought it might be wrong. But it's stood up, as far as I can tell, as just so weird. So the line of evidence I'm talking about is one based on epigenetic modification of genomes. So just to explain what that means, the genome is not just a sequence of letters, DNA letters, adenines, thymines, guanines, and cytosine, ACTG. It also is decorated in anybody's cells by modifications that tell the genes when to be on and off in what conditions. So an example of such a modification is methylation in cytosine-guanine pairs. So this turns down a gene and makes it not functional in certain tissues. And this methylation is bestowed by cellular environments and differs in different cells and also in different species to identify which genes are more active or more passive. And it's not directly encoded by the ACTGs locally. It's encoded by something else and sometimes even passed on by your parent directly. So it's really very interesting. So this can be read off ancient genomes. The methylation pattern survives in Denisovan and Neanderthal genomes, and we can actually learn which genes were turned down and turned up. So work by David Gochman and Liron Carmel and colleagues created these maps of where in the Neanderthal genome, where in the Denisovan genome, and where in modern human genomes genes are turned on and off. And there's a lot of technical complexity to this problem, but they identified differentially methylated regions, several thousand parts of the sections of the genome that were consistently and very differently turned down or turned up in Neanderthals and modern humans. And when they looked at the set of differentially methylated region, roughly 1,000 of them, that were systematically different on the modern human lineage, and asked what characterized them, was their particular biological activities that was very unusual on the modern human-specific lineage, there was a huge statistical signal that was very, very surprising and very, very unexpected, and it was the vocal tract. So it was the laryngeal and pharyngeal tract, and because you can actually learn from little kids with congenital malformations, when a gene gets knocked out by an inborn error of genetic inheritance, kids will have, for example, a face that looks different or a vocal tract that looks different and so on. You know what the effect of knocking out these genes is. We can actually imply directionality to how the modern human-specific changes are. And the directionality is to change the shape of the vocal tract, which is soft tissue, not preserved in the skeletal record, to be like the way ours is distinctive from chimpanzees. So in the shape that we know is very helpful for the articulation of the range of sounds we use that chimpanzees don't have in their laryngeal and pharyngeal tract. So even though we don't have surviving hard tissue like skeletons from this part of the body, we now have this methylation signature, which suggests that these changes have occurred specifically on our lineage and are absent in both the Neanderthal and Denisovan lineages. So if you think this change in the vocal tract is important in language, which seems possibly reasonable, then maybe that's telling you that there's very important changes that have happened in the last 500,000 or a few 100,000 years, specifically on our lineage, that were absent in Neanderthals and Denisovans.